Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers. Here we are right before the Green Bay Packers game on Sunday. We're going to preview the game, talk Seahawks football, and bringing it all together with my good friend and colleague, Keith Myers.
Hey, so yeah, bye week over. Let's get ready for some football.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Yeah. Seahawks play the Packers this week in what is a really big game for Seattle. Like, it was going to be a big game no matter what, because these are the Packers are a very good team, but the Seahawks need this one if they're going to make a run. So it's an interesting game that we're up against here coming out of the bye.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I think you could pretty much tape record that little segment right there and play it in front of every single show that we have now for the rest of the year.
Well, except for the good team part, because they play some bad teams between now and then.
Well, that's true, but we are 3-5. We somehow need to get to 500. I mean, before we can even have a conversation at all about what do we do next, how do we build on this, what are we going to do in the playoffs? We need to get to 500.
Yeah,
and we've got the two toughest games of the season, or at least two of the toughest games of the season coming up right now. Green Bay first, right in front of us, followed up by Arizona Cardinals at home. It doesn't get any harder than that right now with the two top performing teams in the NFC. The only question in this game is going to be, will the Green Bay Packers have Aaron Rodgers to suit up on Sunday after he's gone into COVID protocol, acquiring COVID-19 last week, missed last week's game. We saw what Jordan Love did in that game. Didn't look pretty at all for their offense against the Kansas City.
Bad Kansas City defense.
Yeah, Kansas City defense. Their offense was struggling too, so it was a low scoring affair.
Yep,
kind of weird, but they lost that game, and you can basically attribute that to not having Aaron Rodgers out there. So in this game, I've looked at all the stuff. I've listened to all the coaches talk. I've listened to the player himself. And really, I don't know that there's anything standing in his way of getting back on the field this week. It seems like all he needs, and we talked about this the last show of kind of what the protocols were to get him back in the game. I think we kind of misrepresented that a little bit. Come to find out, the protocol for having 2 negative tests is for a person that already has a vaccine. But if you do not have a vaccine, all you need to do is have COVID. All you need to do is be quarantined essentially for 10 days and then be cleared by a doctor to play.
Well, true, but being cleared by a doctor means being COVID negative.
Go out and look at it. I suggest you have to be COVID negative to get cleared by the doctor. No one who is COVID positive is going out onto the from
field,
what I understand, it's different.
For 10 days or not.
From what I understand, it's different if you have COVID, because then all you need to do is be symptom free.
No, because
and a certain number of days have to pass without symptoms.
If you can still spread it, so the 10 days is a minimum. And you have to be COVID free. Like, you actually have to, we're just getting cleared by a doctor. You have to.
So you're saying he has to have a test.
Yes.
And he has to pass it, a negative test 2 times, just like everyone else?
No, the 2 times part might not, because that's the, you're right. That was for the vaccinated. And it's just to make sure that you don't get a false negative and, get on the field when you're still, you can still spread it. But you can, if you're vaccinated, you can fight this off fairly quickly and be back in a few days. When you're not vaccinated, the 10 days is a minimum quarantine. And so, you have to be COVID free in order to get back on the field. It's not just, oh, well, you did your 10 days, but now you can come back on the field and give it to everyone else.
Yeah, I thought it was just asymptomatic and all that kind of stuff.
So
I probably need clarification on that. I got that from Schefter's, a couple of tweets where he kind of put it together where what needed to happen for him to get back on the field. So
yeah, well, it falls into that doctor part of being cleared by a doctor.
Yes,
that it falls into that, and so I don't think that it's cut and dry in that you
expect him back on the field?
I do, but I don't think it's like 100%, like you were saying. I think it's closer to like 65,
wow.
2/3, because there's a couple different parts to that. One is he was never symptom free. This isn't an asymptomatic infection. This was a symptomatic infection where he had, COVID symptoms and had some, it's in the lungs and that kind of stuff. And it is a disease that can take time to clear.
I think that could be a factor, regardless of whether, if he comes back.
Yeah.
And I don't wish any ill will on anybody. And I hope that he returns. I like to face a team with their best players because I like to be competitive. I think the Seahawks feel the same way.
Well, it's way more fun as a fan to watch good players.
So let's talk in a way that factors him in.
Yeah.
So if he does come back, and we talked about this prior to pushing record, you mentioned like Cam Newton, from a prior year having COVID and then coming back and being a different player as far as the physical ability on the field. Kind of, how does that translate?
Well, and I think what you look at with Newton is that he was actually playing pretty well. And people kind of forget that because he had such a terrible year last year overall.
He had like almost 600 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns rushing.
Yeah, and so he was actually playing really well. Got COVID, missed some time, and when he came back, he looked slow. He looked lethargic. He just didn't have that energy, and it looked bad for a good 5 or 6 weeks after he came back. And by then their season was over. And so it was one of those things where it took a toll on his body, and it has to do with the lungs. And part of it is the way he plays, because he plays very physical. He is a running quarterback who, you can run that quarterback power runs behind him because he's so big. And that's just kind of the way he plays. So
his lungs became weakened, and
it really mattered. Whereas I think with other quarterbacks, like if this had happened to someone like Brady, I don't think it would matter as much because
let's talk about Aaron Rodgers.
He's a guy that steps back and whatever. So Rodgers is kind of in the middle. He can play from the pocket and sling it. He doesn't have to run in the same way that that Newton does in order to be successful. But he's also a guy who's athletic and likes to extend plays and get outside the pocket a little bit. He's not going to run for a bunch of yards, but he is going to move around a lot. And if he's struggling to,
and he hasn't practiced for 10 days, he hasn't exercised per se, who knows?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just take it. For discussion purposes, let's just take that out of the equation and just assume we've got a healthy Aaron Rodgers coming in. Let's talk about, your expectations, though, taking the team we're facing out of the equation just for a minute, and taking a look at the Seahawks and their roster coming out of a bye, had a great game, the last game that they were in against a weak opponent, but took care of business in a way that gave you some hope that they're kind of on track. Their defense has been tracking with more success lately. And now we're injecting Russell Wilson for sure. Looks like we might get Chris Carson back. And also D. Eskridge looks like he's set now to return to the roster and have some direct impact on the way that the offense is going to be dialed up. Now, we just don't know for sure because he went out in the first game with that concussion and we haven't seen him since. We just haven't seen the impact yet, the promise of the impact. So with all that said, where do you think the Seahawks are? Like mentally, physically, at 3-5, they've got all this now new energy coming in this week. Are they going to be ready for this game?
I believe they will be. I mean, they've had that extra week to prepare. They've been able to. They took a few days off last week, which that's collectively bargained. It's not a coach's decision anymore.
This time of the year, it's actually a good thing.
Yeah, and so they took some time off. They've gotten guys healthy, and not just the guys who are coming back off the injured list. Everybody by this point of the year, if you've been playing, they're banged up. You've got offensive linemen who with ankles that they have to tape or they can't walk, and just stuff like that. And just an extra week, no game, and the body just recovers. So I think they're going to be in really good shape as far as that stuff goes. And so physically they're going to be ready. The coaches didn't take the extra time off. Like the players are there. So they're watching extra tape. They're spending extra time on stuff. They're really dialing in stuff, and they get a chance to self-scout a little better because there's more time. And so I think that what you're going to see is a really prepared Seahawks team coming into this. And then this is a team that's been battling without its best players, at least without its best players on offense, not just Wilson, but also Carson. And the
people
receiver
forget how much impact Carson has when he's fully healthy and raring to go. The guy is just a truly standout runner. It's just that we haven't had him consistently over a long period of time. But boy, he could have a serious impact on this game.
Well, and his ability to take what is a 2-yard gain and turn it into a 6-yard gain just with effort and power and running through people. I know that it gets lost in the metrics and whatnot, but you can see the energy on the other players when that kind of stuff starts happening. That's why Marshawn Lynch was so valuable to Seattle, was because everybody fed off him. Watching him run got the defense energized, and it mattered. It really did. And Carson has, to a lesser effect, but he has that same ability to just energize everything. And so I think that what we run into is we forget that Carson can have that effect, that he can make the guys around him better. So having him back, even if it's going to be in a limited role, which I think it will be because he's been out for so long, it's still going to matter. And then
I'd love to see him come back and have 10, 15 touches, but we'll see. I mean, you're right. It's probably going to be metered by the coaching staff just to make sure that he's 100% in his neck, and not getting any questionable hits. So talk about the other guy. Talk about the other guy that's coming in.
The other guy. You're talking about the greatest quarterback in Seahawks history is the other guy.
Yes, that guy.
God, it's Wilson. I mean,
so we haven't had to have this issue. Like we've gone 10 years now without having to have any games, any time away from our beloved franchise quarterback. And here we are, spent the last 3 weeks enduring, and I don't want to take anything away from Geno Smith and company. They did what they could do, and it is what it is. But now Russell Wilson's coming back at a very critical moment. I mean, not a game too soon, right? Because we're at 3-5. We couldn't afford to really go any more than that. Having now, though, facing the two largest and biggest competitors in Green Bay and Arizona back-to-back, what do you expect?
Well, I expect Wilson to just come out bawling. It's been killing him to not play and to watch his teammates play without him, and especially watch his teammates play without him and struggle, because he knows that he can get out there and make plays and make things happen and do things. It's been killing him. He is going to come out firing. I expect the Seahawks offense to come out and just click for the first couple of drives and everything to just work.
Interesting. I mean, really?
Yeah. Like
because
I'm not concerned
about
rust. I'm not concerned about rust at all. The only thing is that he's been cleared to play, and I'm assuming that that his finger is not going to affect his ability to throw the ball, and that we're getting full Russell Wilson.
My
back.
only hesitation on that is Russ is just one guy. We have to depend on mostly the offensive line for your statement to be true. So convince me that the offensive line doesn't look like the offensive line that Russ left like 4 weeks ago.
Kyle Fuller is no longer playing.
The end.
And so that is part of it. And because you look at what happened right up the gut when he hurt his finger, right? It was Kyle Fuller just getting dominated by not even arguably by the best defensive lineman in the NFL. He dominates everyone, but it was still him being absolutely dominated right up the gut, right into Wilson's face. And so
because in the past it seems like the offensive line has given up not only just sacks but pressures early in games that have prevented us from getting into sync, prevented us from converting third downs as best as we want, as we might expect out of an offense that's designed to do just that.
Yeah, the offensive line is still the weak link on offense. We thought it was going to be better this year. I mean, Jackson has been good, but Lewis has been banged up and hurt, so he hasn't played at the high level that he played at last year. Which is one of the things, like, he missed some time, and now he was back for the Jacksonville game, and now he's got another week to. So what do you think? I expect him to be good. Jackson's been good. I think, just that the interior of the Seahawks defensive line should be better.
Offensive line.
Sorry, offensive line. So that it'll stop the pressure being right in Wilson's face. Dwayne Brown, I think we're starting to see him on the downside, which is unfortunate because been such a good player for so long. But he hasn't been playing as well this year. And
I think having a healthy Lewis right next to him will help.
Yeah,
then he doesn't have to worry. He just has to focus on the guy in front of him.
Yeah, he doesn't have to watch the inside too.
What do you think about the Green Bay defense against our offense?
Green Bay's defense is better than I think most people think. It is a very solid unit. They get after the quarterback pretty well. Kenny Clark, right in the middle of it, is just an underrated and underappreciated defensive tackle. And I like their defense as a unit. I think they have.
There's a couple of players though that are out that kind of give me a little bit of question, and one that's maybe debatable and we really liked in the draft. So Zadarius Smith is on injured reserve right now.
Yep, and that matters quite a bit.
Jair Alexander, their corner, is on injured reserve right now. Eric Stokes, guy we really liked in the draft, thought Seattle would be in play to have him. He's out.
Yep.
In last Sunday's game, didn't return in that game, is questionable for this game. If he's not in there, Kevin King goes.
And Kevin King's a name that Seahawks fans, if they're willing to admit it at this point, when the Seahawks drafted Shaquille Griffin, at least Seahawks Twitter just was up in arms that the Seahawks didn't draft Kevin King 2 rounds earlier.
He was the second coming of Sherman.
Sure.
It just was, as far as body type, skill, aggressiveness, etc.
Well, except for the skill part. He hasn't.
But that was the thought, though.
He hasn't been particularly good. He got absolutely lit up in the playoffs last year. I mean, he had more to do with Green Bay's loss and exit than any other player on the field.
It's true.
But at the same time, the kid can be good.
He came in last week after Eric Stokes left the game and played fairly well, but nonetheless,
I thought he played pretty well in that game.
What I'm saying though is the Green Bay Packer defense is slightly weakened this week as they face the Seahawks in a couple of key positions. On offense, Kylan Hill, their third running back, is on injured reserve. Josh Myers, the center that they picked up in the draft, is on injured reserve. So they're missing a few pieces. Their left tackle may or may not be able to go in this game as well.
That's a big deal because he's good. Back
so
to Gary.
and Aaron Rodgers, right? So Aaron Rodgers is kind of up in the air. We just don't know. But so you think their defense is a little underrated, and I do too, especially at home.
Yep. It's at home, in the cold, in the wind,
with the crowd.
Right. It's an underrated defense. They do have a little bit of a weakness at corner at the moment, which, anytime you've got a DK Metcalf and a Tyler Lockett, that's not a place that you want to have a weakness. But they're good up front. They're good. They have good linebackers. I mean, having Smith out, it hurts. But overall, it's still a really
they still have
unit.
Devondre Campbell and stuff. So they do. They have an ability, but they're going to face a Russell Wilson offense, which, if it turns out, is the same offense that was in the first 3 or 4 weeks. We're talking about a highly rated offense that has abilities. They just never really consistently put it together quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter. They always seem to go, they were a first half team or they were a second half team. They never really kind of put two halves together.
They were still the number one offense in terms of yards per play.
And everyone was complaining while we were for number one.
Yeah.
And all we did was complain because we weren't seeing that dynamic offense, quick strike, hit players over the middle, use of tight ends, etc. It seems like the offense had not yet had a chance to mature by the time Wilson left.
But it was the best offense in the league. So I don't get the complaining when you have the number one offense in the league. In
I think it came down to third down conversions and points scored. Yeah, but points scored. Yeah, okay.
Points per drive.
That's awesome. If we had the ball.
That's the problem. The problem was never the offense. Points per drive. They were the number one offense. They turned possessions into points better than any other team in the NFL.
Unfortunately, we were a deficit by about 10 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't get the ball back.
And so this is blaming the offense.
So now what you're saying is now the defense is improved. In fact, I misspoke the last game. I said that it was for the entire year. What I meant was the last 4 games. So 18 points per game allowed since week 4 is 4th best in the NFL. Allowed the lowest third down conversion rate in the last 4 games in the entire NFL. So those teams were marginal.
Yep, the Steelers aren't a good offense.
Nonetheless, everybody in the NFL has to face marginal offenses and good offenses. But the first, 4 games, we faced some pretty decent competition. And so I'm taking all that with a grain of salt. I think that puts us, clearly in a kind of middling category, if you will. Let's just say 15th to 18th in the NFL overall on defense. That's still a defense that can help you win games. It's not going to hurt you per se. And so combine that with a number one offense with Russell Wilson returning. There's a chance here that we can pull off this victory, and we need to, quite frankly. It's a very important game. It certainly, I think, sets the table for the rest of the season. If we can get this one, we get the next one, and so forth. What about Seattle's defense against Aaron Rodgers and their offense? What do you expect to see? How do we slow him down? How do we get him off the field?
Well, the key part of getting Rodgers off the field is getting 2 people on Devontae Adams at all times, because he's the guy that kind of makes everything go within their offense because of his ability to always win against coverage. And so you've got to double team him. You've got to take that away and force Rodgers to go elsewhere, because after Adams, the rest of his weapons, they're not, it's not the greatest unit out there. And so I think that's what you've got to do. But you've also got to be careful about the running backs, because this is, Jones and Dillon those are good running backs, both, Jones running the ball and Dillon catching the ball out of the backfield. They've got some, dynamic players there to take the pressure off of Rodgers. So you've got to, it really comes down to being disciplined, right? Double team Adams and then be super disciplined in their lanes and everything, which is what they were not doing early in the season when the defense looked terrible. And it's what they have been doing the last few weeks when the defense has looked significantly better.
Interesting. So what are you going to, what's this thing going to come down to?
Man, it's hard. This is a tough game to predict, simply because I don't know what to expect out of Rodgers. Is he going to play? If he is going to play, how healthy is he? How much rust?
It could come down to pressure.
How much rust do we see on Russell Wilson? Is he able to hit those long passes? Because there's going to be opportunities for him to hit those big plays, and normally you just expect him to, but he hasn't played.
If I was Green Bay strategy wise on defense against Russell Wilson this week, I would really play vanilla up front, rush 4, drop back an extra guy in coverage, and challenge him to go over the top, actually. So make life really hard on the intermediate routes and shallow routes, outs, screens, etc., and give him that look that says, something deep is available, and make him prove it. Make him go prove that his finger's good. Make him prove that he can throw the ball over 30 yards in a 30-degree day with a little bit of snow, possibly. That's my approach. That's what I would do. And occasionally, I blitz him and so forth and confuse the offensive line a little bit that has a continuity issue. That, this is the first time this unit is going to be together this season so far. So, and especially with Posick at center, making those line calls, I just really kind of create some pressure in that respect. And then on defense for Seattle, I think that the strategy in this game should be turn them loose.
Blitz.
Yeah, not a huge amount, but say an additional 5 to 7 times during this game in strategically placed moments that really put a lot of pressure on Rodgers to perform, because he's been off. He hasn't practiced. The COVID symptoms could still be a factor, even if he's cleared, as far as his lung capacity and all that kind of stuff. So I would put him on the run. I would get pressure on him. I would force timing issues. You mentioned the double team against Adams. There's got to be a way, and may possibly force some turnovers. Quandre Diggs has 3 interceptions in the last 5 games. Things are starting to work on Seattle's defense, and I think if we can just kind of turn it up just a notch, and Pete Carroll is excellent at turning it up just a notch when the team needs to at the right moments during the right part of the season, which is mid-November and December. This team just seems to find a way to turn it on, and I'm looking for that again.
Yeah. So, and I would agree. I think you're looking at getting after Rodgers. Is typically a bad idea. Blitzing Rodgers is typically a bad idea, because he's not
one of the best at beating the blitz in all of NFL history.
Because he's really good at seeing it coming, seeing the hot route, getting the ball out of his hands before the people gets there. So blitzing Rodgers, I think, typically is a bad idea. In this game, because of the lung issue, because he had COVID and he was not symptom free, I think that you got to get him on the run. You don't necessarily want to open up your secondary to letting him just throw the ball to open guys because you're blitzing all the time. But you got to get him on the run. You set up a twist, set up a stunt so that you can get pressure from one side and make him run. And doing that, it's going to wear him down. I'm sorry, it's just the nature of COVID.
Yes.
You've got to get him moving.
So what's the alternative? I mean, for me, you just don't want to let a guy sit back there and be able to pick apart our defense underneath stuff in kind of the Pete Carroll design defense. That's what you want to do. But Rodgers is so good at that that you got to do something different in this game. We're 3-5. We're not like the best team in the NFL. We are inferior talent-wise to this Green Bay team. So we're going to need to depend on turnovers. We're going to need to depend on a great game by Russell Wilson, possibly Chris Carson and company, and for our defense to kind of make a difference somehow. And I think if you do what you said, create some twists, some stunts, selectively blitz, get Jamal Adams involved, in doing that, I think you're giving your team the best chance, because if you do nothing, play vanilla defense like we did the first, 6-7 weeks of our season, that's a recipe for just losing this game, giving up a lot of yards, keeping your offense off the field. That's an issue. I think you want to generate as much opportunity for Russell Wilson in this game as possible. And to do that, you're going to have to take some chances.
To me, that's not this game. That's every game. You want to give Russell Wilson as many opportunities as possible, because the Seahawks, I keep coming back to it, the best offense in the league when he was healthy. And so, do what you need to do. If you're going to give up points, don't do it on an 8-minute drive, right? If you're going to give, if you're going to give up points, give up points quickly so that Wilson can get back on the field. Don't let him have that 8-minute drive.
So you're saying, you're going against the philosophical foundation of Pete Carroll in saying that.
I mean, this is a different team than what we saw in the past, where the Seahawks had a great defense. And so you let the defense do it. You ask Wilson to be super efficient. And you let the defense do. This isn't a great defense. We hope a good defense, based on what we've seen the last 4 weeks. But
you've got to put your playmakers in a position to make plays.
Yeah, and the strength of this team is Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Chris Carson, right? That's the strength of this team. You have to design your philosophy as a team around your biggest strength. And if the biggest strength is your offense, you got to give your offense as many opportunities to score points as possible. And that's how good things happen. And allowing other teams to have 8-minute drives keeps your offense off the field for far too long. There was, in I think it was the Tennessee game, there was because of halftime and because of 2 Tennessee drives, it had been an hour of real time between Russell Wilson passes. Wow. Yeah. And so you can't do that. You cannot do that. So attack. Get it. If you're going to give up big plays, do it attacking, because you know what?
Right, because you're going to give your chance an opportunity, team an opportunity. Quandre Diggs to make a play, to jump a route, Jamal Adams to tip a ball, to recover a fumble, force a fumble, etc. We just need more of that. I think the team has playmakers that have that ability. We just play so straight up against teams. Often you're just not giving your team a chance to make plays. You're just asking them to make stops, and sometimes making stops in the NFL is hard. Sometimes you just need to go make plays. And so I'd like to do a little bit more of that, dial up that part of the formula.
And not to an extreme where they're like blitzing on every play and any of that, but you got to mix it up. You've got to come with different looks, and but you do have to attack at times. You can't just sit back. This defense isn't as good as Seahawks defenses in the past. It's just not. Especially
all right. Give me a score.
Oh man. So I went and looked this up right when we started. The Packers are only 3-point favorites, which given the records of the two teams, and you take last week, you
take
loss,
the home field advantage at Lambeau in the cold.
Yeah, but also
it's neutral. That's a neutral call.
If you ignore last week's game because Love was quarterback instead of Rodgers, and then you look at the records, you think, okay, this is going to be 7.5 point game. It's 3. And that's at Lambeau, which means, on a neutral field, it would be a toss-up game. In Seattle,
so let me ask you this: is that a fact?
Favored.
Is that a factor of Aaron Rodgers not declared yet?
I think it might be. So that line might move on.
I would anticipate that game if
Saturday,
he's starting by. That moves to like 5.
Well, and
nonetheless, still within a score.
Yeah, and so I looking at that, I mean, Vegas is not in the business of being wrong, right? They make tons of money by being better at predictions than, anyone. And so they're expecting this to be a close game. And a close game with Russell Wilson at quarterback is different than a close game with Geno Smith at quarterback. And a close game with an Aaron Rodgers that is lung capacity is not what it used to be.
Possibly worn down in 4 quarters.
Especially in the cold, because you know how much that makes your lungs hurt just trying to run and breathe when it's that cold out. I think you're looking at the end of the game, the Seahawks being able to do more offensively than Green Bay in the fourth quarter. The Seahawks have to get it to the fourth quarter. And I don't necessarily say I like their chances because I think the Packers are probably going to win this, but it's going to be close. It's going to be tight.
I can see you wavering right now.
I'm because I'm trying to sell that the Seahawks have a shot in this, but still predict Green Bay because I think the home field advantage ends up winning. But it's going to be close. So what I've got is 24-23.
Wow.
Packers.
Gosh, man, if it's that close, I want Seattle so bad. I can't even tell you because that would just make or break the season as far as having an opportunity as a wild card, maybe a slightly more favorable matchup, et cetera. We're probably going to end up being on the road. That's probably a given. However, matchups are important. This is a critical game. There's 2 games that really are right here with Arizona and Green Bay. Green Bay comes first. It's on the road. You talked about all the factors. I'm going to go with a win because I said in my little text to you earlier in the week or last weekend, I said, I think that the Seahawks, I didn't say I think, the Seahawks are going to go 8-1.
Yeah, he said they're going on a run.
And I just have this feeling. I just really do. It's just one of those things where I just feel like, and this isn't one of those losses that I'm predicting. That I think comes with the Rams, but I think they somehow figure it out in this game and it comes together. They go on the road, they shock the world, they beat this team, not only by 1 point, but I think they beat this team by like 9. I think they do. I think they go in and everything starts clicking. We get a turnover. We end up putting 27 points on these guys. And I think that Green Bay only ends up with 17. So it's just one of those fluky games because traditionally it ain't like that. Mm-hmm. We don't do that well. But I think with all the factors you just talked about, I'm just taking a chance on this one and saying that we're going to pull out a 10-point victory on the road against Green Bay. I know. I hope I'm right. I don't care if you think I'm right or wrong.
No,
just
it's not.
Hope I'm right.
I'm like, what I was going to say is that would be amazing, and I'm thinking about what that would do to change the perception of Seattle. That they would go beat the team that is it's kind of considered the favorite in the NFC along with the Rams to go to the Super Bowl. It's like Rams Packers are the 2 teams. And if Seattle were to go into Lambeau and get a 10-point win, that would be just crazy. Like everyone would be looking at Seattle and being like, oh, they got Wilson back. now they're a force. Now
Now
they're
we
something
can
we have to
talk.
worry about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that would just be one game. I mean, that would be the beginning, but we would still have so long of a road to go. But you know what? Life's too short. Might as well throw that out there.
Yep.
Just all of a sudden, you just got to have a really big prediction, and that's mine for the year. So, anything else? We'll get out of here.
No, let's get out of here.
All right. Find Keith at Myers NFL. I'm at NW Seahawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook. SeahawksPlaybook.com has all the stuff. Find us on YouTube and subscribe or your favorite podcast app. So until next time,
Go Hawks.
go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.